In ancient times, the Kingdom of Kush, which was also frequently referred to as Nubia, was a wealthy land that was abundant in culture, power, and resources. Kush, which was situated to the south of Egypt, was in a perfect location along the banks of the Nile River. It was situated in a territory that extended from what is now southern Egypt to northern Sudan. As a result of its abundance in gold, ivory, precious stones, and other valuable resources, it became an important participant in the trade networks that connected Africa to the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Its significance was not only owing to its strategic location, but also to the fact that it was located in a strategic location. The history of the Kushites is one of a strong and independent African civilization that grew to prominence and even dominated Egypt for about a century. While much of history has concentrated on the splendor of Egypt, the Kushite story is one of resistance and independence. Egypt was dominated by the Black Pharaohs of Kush as the 25th dynasty for almost a century, during which time they brought together two ancient civilizations under their authority. But who exactly were these dictators? What exactly was the Kingdom of Kush, and how did its rulers work their way up to the position of monarchs in one of the most famous civilizations in the annals of human history? For a better understanding of their ascent to power, it is necessary to examine the larger history of Kush, including its ties with Egypt and the great accomplishments of its rulers. It is possible to trace the beginnings of Kush all the way back to the ancient city of Kerma, which flourished way back in the year 2500 BCE. It was during this early time of Kush that the kingdom flourished autonomously, establishing a cultural identity that was separate from that of its neighbor to the north. The people of Kush created their own burial practices, architectural styles, and artistic traditions. These included the construction of enormous burial mounds for their rulers and prominent members of society, as well as the creation of exquisite pottery and statues that reflected their gods and hierarchy. The Kingdom of Kush remained robust in spite of Egypt's infrequent military campaigns into Nubia during its New Kingdom period. These campaigns were conducted with the intention of asserting control over Kush's resources. When Egypt began to weaken with the fall of the New Kingdom around 1070 BCE, Kush began to reassert itself as a key force in the region. This occurred around the same time. At the same time that Egypt entered a period of internal struggle and division, the Kushites, who had Napata as their capital, began to gain strength. Napata, which was situated at the bottom of the fourth cataract of the Nile, developed into a significant religious and cultural center for the Kushitic monarchs. A temple dedicated to Amun was located in Napata, and it was of great significance since it reflected the profound religious connections that existed between Egypt and Kush. Not only did the Kushites worship their own gods, but they also acquired and altered Egyptian deities. Amun, for example, became one of the most respected gods in the Kushites' pantheon. The invasion of Egypt by the Kushites is considered to be one of the most significant periods in African history. This merging of civilizations laid the groundwork for this momentous occasion. In the 8th century before the Common Era, BCE, Pi, the great ruler of Kush, began an expedition into Egypt. At that period, Egypt was ruled by a number of rival local rulers, and there was very little authority in the central government. Not only did Pi see an opportunity to expand his realm, but he also felt that it was an opportunity to reestablish what he saw to be the correct religious order in Egypt. Both a political conquest and a religious mission, his invasion was a religious mission in equal measure. As Pi marched into Egypt, he defeated the local warlords and secured authority over the whole Nile Valley. This was a spectacular display of military strategy and religious dedication on Pi's part. Following his victory, Pi made his way back to Napata, leaving Egypt in the hands of his vassals. However, his legacy was not yet complete. He published a victory stela that was both a celebration of his win and a thorough account of the piety and humility with which he approached his victories. The Kushite Dynasty, also known as the 25th dynasty, was established by Pi's successors, including his brother Shabaka, who established Kushite authority over Egypt. The seat of power was relocated to Memphis by Shabaka, which served as a symbolic unification of Egypt and Kush. Egypt saw a period of revival beginning with his reign and continuing through the reigns of his successors. The Black Pharaohs were profoundly impacted by the splendor of Egypt's history, and they made it their personal mission to bring back the nation's former greatness. During the difficult times in Egypt, temples and monuments that had fallen into disrepair were reconstructed. Classic Egyptian art, architecture, and religious activities were brought back to life by the Kushitic monarchs, who incorporated these classic elements into their own Nubian traditions. The art of this time period represented a distinctive combination of Egyptian and Kushite characteristics. Statues and reliefs frequently depicted Kushite rulers with distinctively African features, such as wider noses and larger lips, to emphasize their Nubian heritage while wearing the regalia of Egyptian pharaohs. This was done in order to emphasize the contrast between the two cultures. Taharqa, a powerful monarch and warrior who ascended to the throne in the year 690 BCE, is considered to be one of the most well-known of the Black Pharaohs for his reign. At a time when Egypt and Kush were experiencing unparalleled levels of prosperity and military prowess, Taharqa ruled over both entities. It was during his reign that enormous construction projects were carried out, one of which being the extension of the temple complex at Karnak. He added great courtyards, columns, and statues to the grounds of the temple. He was responsible for the transformation of the Amun Temple in Nubia, which is located at Jebel Barkal, into a significant place of devotion. This temple also served as a spiritual connection between Egypt and Kush. There were also a number of military battles that took place during Taharqa's reign, mainly with the Assyrians. Due to the fact that the Assyrian Empire was expanding throughout the Middle East, Taharqa found himself in the position of defending Egypt against multiple assaults. The Kushites were eventually compelled to withdraw from Egypt as a result of the constant pressure from the Assyrians, despite the fact that he was successful in repelling several raids directed against them. In spite of the fact that they had left Egypt, the Kingdom of Kush continued to be a powerful and influential culture. Meroë, a city that became one of the most major centers of culture, commerce, and power in ancient Africa, became the new capital of the kingdom once it was relocated further south. The ancient civilization of Meroë was renowned for its highly developed ironworking industry, which was considered to be among the most advanced in global history. Throughout the region, the iron tools and weapons that were manufactured in Meroë were held in extremely high esteem. The remarkable pyramids that were constructed during this time period are evidence that the city was also the center of a thriving creative and cultural scene during this exact time period. In contrast to the pyramids of Egypt, which had smooth sides, the Meroitic pyramids were smaller and had steep, angular sides, which gave them a characteristic aspect that was both distinctive and spectacular. It was not until the 4th century CE that these pyramids were used as burial grounds for the kings and queens of Kush, who continued to be laid to rest in ornate tombs even after the pyramids were constructed. An indication of the kingdom's efforts to build a cultural identity that is unique from Egypt is the fact that the people of Meroë established their own script, which is known as Meroitic. However, this script has not yet been fully deciphered or understood. As a result of the rise of powerful queens, sometimes known as Candakes, which are frequently Latinized as Candaces, the political and religious life of the kingdom underwent a remarkable transformation throughout this time period. Amanirenas was one of the queens who played a significant role in the administration of the kingdom and the leadership of military campaigns. After the Romans invaded Nubia in the 1st century BCE, Amanirenas is famously recognized for her ferocious struggle against them. This resistance occurred after the Romans had invaded Nubia. The ancient world was irrevocably altered by the presence of Kush, despite the fact that it had declined as a result of the emergence of the adjacent kingdom of Aksum and the alteration of trade routes. In addition to their role as rulers of Egypt, the Black Pharaohs were also pioneers, builders, and leaders in the preservation of Egyptian culture. In the ruins of Meroë's pyramids and the monuments of their conquest in Egypt, their legacy can still be seen. Their rule was a period of African power and influence at the crossroads of civilizations, and their impact can still be seen today. In addition to being a tale of military and political dominance, the narrative of the Kingdom of Kush and the Black Pharaohs is also a tale of cultural fusion and resiliency. It is a striking monument to the sophisticated and durable civilizations that existed in ancient Africa. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.